What outfit to wear is maybe the most boring question. Bring everything that makes you feel confident. My job is to get you in the best light with the perfect background and the most appropriate expression for your audience. So, whether you're going for that corporate look, or you're going for the outgoing community leader, or the confident entrepreneur, I got you. Got more questions? Ask away.
My name is Kevin Tai. I'm the owner photographer of Three Circles Studio. We are a headshot photography studio, and what we do is create kick-ass headshots for people who are hustlers from seed rounds to C-suites, focusing very much on a customer service mentality where we want to give you guys the best experience ever, because people are really scared of taking pictures.
They're scared of team pictures. They're scared of headshots. I mean, people are just scared of, like, they're like, oh, like whenever you take a click, they're like, oh, my eyes are closed. Oh, I mean, like you can see and know. I mean, like literally, I know what you're feeling. I know what you're feeling in every single way. We're going to definitely talk about the business and the whole entire world of photography, because I'm sure that we have a lot of things in common, because I have been taking pictures since I was 8 years old. It's how I learned how to speak English. And it was just such a creative way that my cousin just like literally gave me a camera. He's like, because you know how to speak it, but you're being intimidated by the red marks on the paper, and you're being intimidated by people saying, you don't know how to speak the language, because I speak 3 different languages, because I'm first generation born here. And so the camera was literally my window to the world. And so I want to definitely understand where that came from, but I want to talk about little Kevin. Little Kevin, where are you from? Where, what tell me about your family. Walk me through all the way till you get your first job.
Wow. Okay. That's a long story. Everything. Well, my grandparents came from China. Well, they were born in China, and they left China in the 1920s because of Civil War. Mm-hmm. And my parents were born in Vietnam, and they left Vietnam because of the Civil War. So they came over to the United States in the 70s. My father came over as a refugee in the late 70s, and when he was 16 or 18 years old. He tried twice. First time he got arrested. Family had to give up all the gold to get him out. And then he tried again. My father was the youngest, came over to the United States, and he was the OG hustler, right? When you hear the immigrant story. So he came over to the United States with nothing in his pockets, just the goodwill of everybody that's around him that helped him become successful. So getting jobs was through recommendations, referrals. His first building that he bought was from his boss, who gave it to him pretty much at cost, and was able to pay him directly the money over the course of, I don't know how many, I think it was like 10, 15 years. Yeah. And my dad worked extra hard to give all that money extra money so he could pay it off faster. That's his mentality. I grew up not knowing that I was poor, but feeling I was poor, because my father he's the youngest of his family of 9 children, and he gave all that money back to Vietnam in order to bring the rest of the family over. And when they brought him over, also spend a lot of money on putting down payment for the houses, giving them education, giving them a startup for their business. And so all that money that I thought should belong to me as a kid didn't belong to me, and went to my family members, which now I really appreciate. And because my cousins and my cousins' kids now, so my nieces and nephews, are very successful in the way that they want to be. So some of them went to college, some of them went to trade school, some of them joined the military, some of them actors. And so there's the opportunity of living out the American dream, which is you work hard and your kids can do whatever. So I, in high school, I did a lot of social justice work and working with the community. My first job was educating about the homeless. Another job I had was giving tours of Boston, and we talked a lot about the not like the big historical, Tea Party stuff, but the local activism, the activism of Chinatown, the activism of South End, the West End, and working with people who were incarcerated, educating people about that, work LGBTQ community, advocating for youth empowerment. And that got me into school for free, which is great. I got a 4-year full tuition scholarship to university. And when I told my dad, he was like, yeah, good, because we don't have any money for you to go to school. No money, at all. And then that started me on a journey of self-discovery. I was a very angry Asian kid. I hated white people for a variety of reasons as I was learning about my history and the history of Asian Americans and others. Got to university, and that's when I learned to communicate in a way that doesn't have to be angry all the time. And I became a teacher, and there's a lot of patience that goes along with being a teacher in Korea. And then that's when I picked up my first camera. I took pictures of Legos. And then after that, I came back to the United States, got my master's degree in teaching ESL, and then got laid off at the pandemic in March 2020 because there was
Wait,
no
wait,
money.
we're gonna pause.
Oh yeah.
Because there's a couple of things to unravel
Yeah.
here. Okay, so one, I love that you were a teacher because I was a teacher. Now you were not a teacher in the United States, and you were saying how you didn't enjoy Caucasians. You were here school, or you went to Vietnam. Well, like, walk me through, because like there's like a gap that you talked about. I'm like, wait, I don't know where I am right now. Are we in Vietnam? Are we in the United States? Where are we?
Okay. So I went to school in Greater Boston at Gordon College, and the school is 97.5% white.
Yep.
The scholarship that I got was to bring more diversity and those types of topics into the school.
Yep.
And that didn't really work out for me very well, because I was the first cohort, which means they didn't have an institution to support me as much.
Yeah, all the mistakes happen with you.
Yeah, actually, it's really cool because the future generations were like, "How come you guys aren't doing more?" And it says we had to survive. So I think the third or fourth cohort was like demanding us step up, and we're like, "We are beaten down, man. Like this is tough," because we didn't know where we belonged. Should we integrate, or should we integrate fully and be there, or should we cause a ruckus and create drastic change?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong with either one, but to create drastic change, really, there has to be a lot of effort and energy. But if we're trying to survive, then.
And also, as you're making the change, the school could have said, "Oh, this isn't working out. We're going to pull back." Mm-hmm. And so it could have. It could have gone in a different direction if the school was not into what you were promoting. It would have gone poorly for every one of the next generation to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the school is supportive, most definitely, but because it was so new at the time, they didn't know what to do. So it's no fault of their own in that case. It's much better now. There's a whole system. There's alumni. I think it's 15th year or 20th year of running, and so there's a good culture of support amongst everybody. And because there's also more students now, there's like 4 or 5 cohorts in each year, every year. So I think that's really great of where they are right now, and especially with the school and the support of the school and the faculty and the other students and the other ministries that are there too.
You're in a school, you're being taught, you are navigating life, and yet you go and now you become a teacher. Was that what you wanted to be all along, or you just like ended up where like, I'm tired of being in the United States and I'm leaving, or I'm visiting family members and I'm like, oh, I kind of like where I am. Like what happened where you decided to leave and become a teacher in, again, Vietnam or here? Where were you a teacher?
I was a teacher in Korea.
Okay.
And I went to
sorry about that. This is me I'm bouncing.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's a lot of international stories. But yeah, I went to Korea because of a girl. It was
always the girl, you know.
Always a girl.
Work, love, or wait. They always say it's work, love, or education are 3 reasons why you will relocate.
And she was the reason why I actually became less angry. She was an adoptee, and so she was a Korean adoptee into a white family in Colorado. And so the discussion of race was never really never openly fully discussed. And then adoptees, there wasn't a lot of research back then. There's a lot more now, but there wasn't a lot of research on the psychology and the sociology and the effects of what it means to be a transracial adoptee or international adoptee, but especially like people who look different from the parents. And so when I was talking to her, I was very angry at her. Like, you should be angry at your dad. You know, he's a racist, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, but I love my dad. Yeah. And I was like, this doesn't jive with my paradigm.
Yeah.
We're still really good friends, and we still talk a lot about these things because she also married a white guy and she has a biracial kid now. She's like, so she's navigating this as well, and I'm still navigating as well because my child is also similar. And so yeah, so we went to Korea to teach, and so she was trying to find her way and her identity, and then I was just I was doing my own thing, but we were kind of just still in the same country.
Yep.
And then she also made me go out with my wife, my girlfriend at the time. She's like, you gotta go out with her. I'm like, I don't want to. And she's like, take her home, make sure she gets home safe. And then fine. And then now my wife is so we're
the irony of that is like the fact that she introduces you to your wife to be, the irony.
Yeah. And
I do like that. I like that a lot. All right, so you're teaching, and then you come back here. I mean, how long were you there?
I was in Korea for about 4 to 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, so usually those ESL courses, they're usually 1 year. Why did you stay so long?
It was a really great experience. A lot of really good people there. I learned what really great managers were at the time. Managers that advocate for you, managers that don't bring top level management down on you. They filter things through. They support me. And then they worked with my skill sets. I still had to follow the rules for a little bit. Yeah. And then once I developed, they like, okay, he can do the teaching thing. Now let's let him get creative in the classroom. And then I became a lead teacher. So it's like, so I had 10 teachers underneath me, so I get to mentor them and help them to really succeed and teach the class. And so that was also a lot of fun. And it was a lot of money. And it was a lot of freedom. And it was a lot of money.
The key word that keeps coming up. Yes.
And it was the living, the living expense, the lifestyle, was very inexpensive. So my rent was like $300. And travel is like it's like dirt cheap. Taking a taxi across the city is like $5. Wonderful transportation systems, food all the time. And you probably know this. Like,
I've been to Korea, and yes, it's like when I say decadent meals, I mean the only place that's ever beat the decadent meals that I had in Korea were when I was in Morocco, and I was like, "Oh, what is happening here with this food situation?" Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's just healthy. It's healthy and it's good.
Yeah. And it's inexpensive. It's like $4 for like a spread. So I loved it. I loved it there.
So you were there for 4 years. What brought you back home?
I was fired from my job. So I taught at a couple of different schools. Same school, different locations. So I decided to go to another location because they offered me the lead teacher role. But the problem was that my manager that was above me was very much a control person. And everything has to happen in exactly the way that she wants it to happen. So an example would be, I had a teachers meeting. So I have about 10 teachers underneath me, but the meeting didn't require me to talk to everybody equally. It was pretty much like different groups of people had different things I had to talk about that pertained to them. So I sent everybody an email that had everything that was there. And then I met with each teacher. So instead of meeting everybody at once for like, 45 minutes, spent 2 hours meeting with each teacher before class started. So they get to come in during lunchtime or
which seems totally fine.
Which is fine with me. I use up my time, but I get to talk to some people for 20 minutes and some people for like 5 minutes. It just depended on the person that needed to hear the information. My boss didn't like that, or my meeting manager didn't like that. She's like, "You didn't have a meeting." I was like, "I did have a meeting. Look at the CCTV. I was here for 2 or 3 hours beforehand." Yeah. She's like, "No, you have to have a meeting together." It doesn't. So there's that.
It didn't mesh with the culture of what she wanted.
Right. And then another example was like, so I was able to. So in Korea, there's a very rote way of learning. So there's a time system for everything to work exactly the way it is. It's a standardized. So that different teachers aren't better than other teachers, which is kind of weird, right? You want teachers to be average, but you want them to be good. So I was different. I taught my teachers to teach to the class. So if you have a class of all girls, all boys, all like preteens, all teenagers, and then in all the different dynamics, but within that, like a quiet class or a very like rambunctious class or very like engaging class. So you teach to them, and then you change your lesson based on those students.
Okay.
Which makes sense. And so then my students learned, so their students learned between 50% to 200% faster. The problem is in Korea, it felt like to the parents they're only playing games. But you would think that if kids are enjoying the class,
they're absorbing the lessons.
So the test scores that we had at the end of each session was like the highest amongst of all the other teachers that taught in other classrooms. But I got in trouble and I got laid off. I got fired because I wasn't following the rules, and there was a lot of complaints. And the complaints were the kids were playing, and yet the test score showed otherwise.
Yeah.
And because they learned faster, we got through materials much faster, which means there's more time to elongate certain activities. But the activities that we elongated were activities designed to be fun so they can learn again faster. So it's I
was gonna say, I like that. I mean, because I grew up in a household where my parents were so frustrated. Where in America you learn to take a test, you like look at it, you recite it, you basically like memorize it, you take the test, and then it's gone. Versus in most countries, you learn it forever. So once it's in you, it's in it forever. And that whole entire concept of playing games or constantly just like I mean, during the summer we weren't allowed to go out until we got our encyclopedias. And once you pulled out the encyclopedia, you have to pick a subject, you have to read about the subject, you have to then write it on the composition books. So that way we're learning about comprehension of the story. We're learning about how to research different topics. And then we're learning our handwriting. Tricky, my dad, tricky, so tricky. But it worked. And it's like in my mind, there's specific things that we grew up with that they're still with me. They're part of me. It's like it's what I believe and I love. And I think that more and more places don't understand how you can intertwine the both. They just assume it's one or the other. And if you intertwine them both, then they become part of you forever. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay.
I think it's called lowering the effective filter. That's a technical term. So
wait,
you lowering the effective filter. And that's a term I think used in education. Basically means if they're less nervous, if they're less anxious, that they're more open to receiving instruction. And they're more open to receiving and then retain. If they're open to receiving, then open to retaining. And then if they're open to retaining, they feel like they're progressing. And if they can progress, they have more confidence. And when they have more confidence, they will learn even more and they trust the teacher even more.
I am dyslexic. I'm dyslexic, and I'm all about that touching, the being a tactile learner. And if I had teachers like you, I would have gone further faster. Throughout the years, I had trickles of you. It wasn't consistent. Those teachers were like, it's my way or the highway, versus the teachers were like, okay, she's smart. Let's find other ways for her to learn. And once they hooked onto that, it was like, I felt like I was a star at that point. So I appreciate any teacher that does things a little bit different to accommodate to all the students, because there's some students that they want to learn, but now I'm just bored because I can't learn that way. And now I get in trouble, and then I'm labeled, and it goes on and on and on and on and on from there. So I commend that. So you come back, what happens next?
I come back and I'm bored for a little bit. I think mostly still coming out of the depression or being fired and kicked out of the country. And then I got a job at Bunker Hill Community College, teaching grandparents, which is one of my favorite things to teach, because they only want to learn English so they could hang out with their kids, or their grandkids, and that's it. There's no like academic needs. There's no like standardized testing. It's just basically they bring in like, my kid said this, what does that mean? And then we go through the lesson based on, we still have a curriculum, but it was very fluid to like, it's just a lot of questions that they had, like, how do I do this? Or I wanted to be able to do this. So that was a lot of fun.
I'm just telling you right now, you're going to heaven. I took care of my grandmother for 21 years and she died at 95 years old. And I'm telling you right now, grandparents, that's all they want. Their blessings in the world is all I want to do is be with my family. And to be able to like communicate and not feel like you're like, oh, grandma's here again. Oh my God. Oh my God. And then you're just speaking broken, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I would speak my Haitian, French, English. And my grandmother's like, I know what you're saying. It's horrific, but at least I'm with you. So, but I think that's what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. We sound like children around them. We sound like little kids even though we're adults.
I think that's amazing. So you're at Bunker Hill, you're teaching classes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to interrupt, but I was like, whenever you're saying something, like I go, I love him. I love Kevin. I love you. You're so awesome. So what happens after?
And then my wife comes over and then I proposed to her. So she came back to the United States. She's from Florida. I proposed to her and then she decided to move up to Massachusetts as we're engaged. And then we worked at the same school because she's also ESL teacher as well. I moved to another school later on, and that had more technology, which is great because I love incorporating tech into the school. Then while I'm at that school, I'm also getting my master's degree. So my master's degree took about 4 years to get.
Mm-hmm.
I did it slowly so I don't go into debt. I think it took like a class a semester, 1 or 2 classes a semester.
Master's in what?
Master's in teaching ESL.
Yes.
And almost a master's in history, teaching history, almost. Around 2017, I think it was, Christmas Eve, I got into a car crash. And car got totaled, it spun on ice. I was going to my gym. That morning, I was like, I'm gonna go to the gym before I eat all this food tomorrow. And you know how when people say that your life flashed before your eyes. So as I'm driving, I don't know why I slipped, but I slipped and then the car just spun at least one time and then it went to the pole and I saw the pole coming. And then when I hit, the pole hit the driver's side, it was about 6 inches ahead of me. It went about 12 inches deep. So my knuckles and my knees were all scratched up and bruised. Yeah. But it just missed my face. It's just a fortunate thing. And at that point I was like, I don't really want to teach anymore. That's not really where I want to be for the rest of my life. And I did not know what that meant at the time. I just knew that kind of wasn't my future. Yeah.
When you're saying that your life flashes before your eyes, and I mean, and we've all had those moments, whether they were very like a blip or a major thing happened in our lives. What was it that, I mean, you've been teaching for such a long time. I mean, you had gotten you're getting your master's. You were just doing so much to help other people. Of all things, what happened? What was the thought in your mind that came up that said, "Nah, I'm done with this"?
I think there's a difficulty in teaching where as much as we want to do good for the students, there's just so many barriers and expectations that's placed on the teachers that prevents us from fully being involved in the students' lives in the classroom. There's a standardized testing, which there is a place for it, I believe, but the rigor of standardized testing overshadows the types of creative and fun intellectual pursuits in the classroom.
Okay.
There's the administration that's there. There's the students who are poor and homeless in the classroom. It's difficult to teach when students are they're not fed and they're not ready to learn. Yep. And that's a whole separate like social issue that needs to happen that we need to address. And then there's also the parents' expectations, and then class sizes are huge, and then and then there's also like the work-life balance. There's really no such thing as work-life balance. I guess just to say the commitment to the students makes it difficult to relax because there's so many things to teach. Like I was talking before, it's you teach to the students and the students' needs and student expectations and their skill sets. And then there are also a lot of their some students have a disability that's not a learning issue that's not diagnosed. Yep. So having to work with that without saying it to them because it's inappropriate to them. Hey, I think you have dyslexia.
Yeah, until the school says that you're diagnosed, you as a teacher, even though you can see it clearly, aren't allowed to verbally say it, or then you get in trouble.
And then sometimes the schools don't want to do it because it costs money. Because if there's only a few students with dyslexia, then you need to hire a professional to come in, but that costs a lot of money to do so. And so they don't necessarily want to advocate for the students in that sense. And so I had to teach a class where it's writing intensive, right? Because it's, let's say it's history, but we still have to offer alternatives to the lesson as well. So more discussions or modified reading assignments or more reading aloud or various form of oral summarization so that students can take mental notes in a different way, and then also not overburdening students. So it's like this, but then other students are excelling, and then so there's a lot to it that we need.
Well, it's adding more. It's all right. So it's adding more work for you as a teacher.
Yeah,
definitely adding more work. But even just as, I as a former teacher, I had second graders and sixth graders in a traditional school setting and a school without walls. And I would have never put that connection together where I try to just make it interactive as well as the writing part of it. But I would have never thought about some kids need to hear the audio. Some kids need to like write it down to actually like have a form of connection. And some kids just tell me what it is, or just let me read it on my own. I'll just do my own thing. So those three different, how the triangle comes together for change. And I would have never even put it together. You just did that so well. So kudos, because I've been doing it, but I never articulated it that way, which is amazing. I'm going to stop this conversation just to go into back to you. Where do you, so you're here, your fiance is now here, you're in Massachusetts. What's happening now? I mean, like you're teaching in schools, you have the accident, you have that aha, you're like your personal aha moment. So from the aha moment, what comes next?
There's a little bit of depression because I don't like, because this is my world and I'm not really, it was difficult for that mental shift. And there was just something, I didn't know at the time, but it was just this cloud over me for the next 6 months of like just going through the motions. My camera that I had for about 10 years, where I took Lego pictures, broke around the same time. And so I wasn't doing I didn't have my creative outlet. Yeah. So my wife buys me a camera. And I was able to then take that camera. She's like, here, I bought you a camera. Or we went to go buy a camera. She gave me the money to do that. And then I started taking pictures of people as just another form of creative outlet. And headshots was one of the first things that I did. I just took pictures of my students, took pictures of my friends and family. And that started me on the track of like learning about headshots, learning about portraiture. And headshots are, to me, I thought at the time was super easy because you don't have to pose the body. It's actually a lot more complicated, but it's not the whole body, it's just up here. And the lighting is much smaller, and because the lighting is so close, you don't need a very big, powerful lights. And so that started me on building a portfolio unknowingly, and then also learning how to run a business, because then I also taught business courses as part of the ESL program.
Okay.
And so I had to learn business. I listened to a lot of podcasts. And I picked up a book, audiobooks. I discovered audiobooks, which is such a blessing. Audiobooks are probably the best things in the world because I can drive and read a whole book at the same time. I can take a train, I can read a book.
I live and breathe by audiobooks. There's not one person that you will again. So my best friend Christine, that she's no longer with us on this beautiful planet of ours. I was training for marathons, and she was like, the music tempo changes when you're running, so it was hard. She goes, run to chapters. I'm like, what? She goes, get an audiobook and run to chapters. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm telling you, I haven't gone back since. And I like during the pandemic, every weekend I started a book on Friday. I ended it on, so I went through 52 books last year because it's doable while you're cleaning, while you're walking, while you're shopping. It's doable in every single way. And the lessons, you're hearing the lessons from the person. So you're hearing the tone of their passion and their enjoyment. I am the hugest advocate for audiobooks. I will say this to everyone, go and get audiobooks because it's a game changer yes, it's nice to sit down and read a book, but it is like a game changer when you're listening to the person that's actually reading it.
Because there's different reasons why we read a book, right? We read a book for learning. we read a book to be inspired, we read a book to be
Mhm.
entertained. And so if I read a book like from Kevin Hart, right?
Did you just finish that?
I read that a couple of years ago, but
Oh wait, no, the new one.
oh, there's a new one.
There's a new one that just came out, and I just finished it yesterday. And I mean, yeah, he makes me laugh. It's a game changer of how much I like him and respect him so much more now.
He's a business person. He like you don't see it. He's like Jay-Z.
Yeah.
He's like Shaq. He's like all these different people who are like
Yeah.
they're business people, and they use their life experiences of like respect and their mistakes that they had, and then talk about their mentors.
Mhm.
This is from the first book. I don't know about the new book, but the first book was all about him being immature and learning from other people
Yep.
about business, and then making mistakes about running a business and how he treated his employees wrong, but then how he learned and then he fixed it and made amends.
Mhm. All of
and-
the above. Yes.
All that within his comedy and his voice and his like exaggeration. Like
I laughed out loud more than, I mean, I really laughed out loud a lot. I mean, I'm in my house, I'm doing the dishes, I'm cooking, and I'm like looking, I'm like, okay, that was really a big laugh for this one book, which was amazing, which was so amazing. But I also, when I was starting my business like you, those resources I didn't get. I mean, I was sitting in an MBA class when the world was imploding in 2009, and what I learned in an MBA class at Babson was nothing that to prepare me to start a business. And so those audiobooks were God sent because I was learning from all the best business people. And yes, I don't learn from your successes. I'm learning from your mistakes without a doubt. And I'm hearing the frustration from them where I can't believe at the stature of where I was, I made these mistakes. And I just finished Indra Nui as well from PepsiCo. And you're hearing, you see the success, you see the pictures, you see her with all these celebrities, but then you hear all the things about how her kids were like, are you ever going to be home? Are you ever going to be home? This is not fun anymore. I'm your daughter and I never get to see you.
it's
Okay.
it's time travel. It's just mentors all over the place that you get to spend time with over and over again. It's failures of the memoirs, right? It's just failures of people in their lives and how they wish they could be better. And we learn from all of that. And then talk to other people like you about it. It's like we get it and then we understand, and it's the same mentor. And then we get to then share about what resonated with us and what stayed, and then we remember what those mentors talked about. Yeah.
For you, what is the and mind you, we took a little pause from what you were explaining, but what is it that you have learned? And like now you're looking to start your own thing. You're researching, which is, thank you for saying that, because I think that too many people want to start a business, they jump into it, but they don't do the R&D. And so the researching and the developing of the idea and the concept, who was the person that really resonated with you? Because your family was all about this. And there's like, I mean, you were talking about that at the beginning, but you never mentioned them, but you're researching, but it's in your DNA.
I haven't really appreciated my parents until the last couple of years, and really in the last about 2 years. It's something that I need to grow out of. It's a lot of Asian Americans of my generation whose family came after, really the 70s and 80s, had to go through a strange cultural mix because there was enough of us now in the United States after, I think, the 1967 Civil Rights Act, where the racist laws of was erased so that we could bring in more Asians into the country, and then a lot more poor Asians, especially because of all the refugees that were coming in, as well. Korea and China, Japan, and Vietnam, and then a lot of other Southeast Asian countries like the Philippines. All of them were coming to the United States, so we were all very, and then there was also the model minority issues that was there, and then the Ronnie King stuff with like the in the 1991 LA riots. So like that generation of like, what does it mean to be an Asian American? Where do we belong? We're light skinned, but we're also minorities. We're immigrants, but we're better than the Black people who've been here for a long time. It's like, so there's this pitting and we didn't really have a culture. And so there was this a long understanding or a common understanding amongst us to be different from our parents. And then it was really interesting now is that a lot of us, I feel, are entrepreneurs now, and then we're going back to understanding and loving our parents the way that, but we just had to do it in our own way. And we just had to do it in a way that's a melding of expectations and cultures of the American dream, and then also the immigrant expectations of what it means to become successful. So a lot of us went through, got our master's degree, got our PhDs, got our doctor, got our MDs, got our CPA licenses, and then so we did it for our parents, and then we switched out to something different. But yet at the same time, that discipline of getting a degree, I think, is a important part. I won't say the only part, but it is an important part to the discipline of building a business. The hustle is inspiration when we look back on it to get us, because we can't hustle as hard as our parents who came from nothing. Our parents gave us the education, gave us the resources, the money, the connections, and we just got to thank them for it.
So how is the business? So how is the business being developed now? So look, you're hearing, I mean, again, it's part of your DNA. I mean, that the hustle is alive and well. I think that's like, there's not one immigrant kid that I know that doesn't understand it. They may not like it, they may not do it, but they clearly understand it. And so now it is that time where I feel like you have all these aha moments are happening. And so now you decide to start this business. Again, going back to the research and development of what was it going to be? How are you going to do it? Why were you going to do it? And what was going to be the long-term concept of what it is?
Treating it like a business. Absolutely. I think a lot of photographers treat photography as an art. I treat it as a business. It's a mindset shift of the starving artist into, you can make $1 million company out of photography. And it's treating it like a business. So one of the things that happened, so last year I got laid off in 2020, March. Around June is when I decided to go full time. After a month of joy, because I don't have to wake up early anymore, and then a little bit of depression because I was a teacher for so long and now I need to make a shift. So around June and July is when I just sat and just stared at my computer screen for hours. My wife was like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm okay. But a lot of that was figuring out what everybody else is doing and what other photographers are doing, and then how to be different. Seth Godin talks about creating a tribe. And he's all about that. And I think Malcolm Gladwell talks about something similar, where it's finding a tribe of people and then really focusing on that and then learning from them. And so that's what I did. And then a lot of other people like Jodi-Tatiana, he talked about creating moments, the power of moments, and then how do I incorporate that into photography? And so a lot of it was just, before I knew what building a business plan was, I was creating a proto sales playbook. I was creating a proto like client relations. I was building a sales funnel, a sales process, without really understanding what that is until recently, where I'm in a school, entrepreneur school right now. But I created a 30-page standard operating procedure earlier this year, in the spring of this year, just by like understanding who my customers were and then what is it that they care about, and then creating a tribe of people who it's not that they care about my art. A lot of photographers is post art. They post their headshots specifically. And I'm posting my headshot, yes, but also the stories behind it. I'm posting what I've learned, posting my journey of this. And so that's really what really developed it, is creating that experience and creating the stories and creating the connections to people who would be my customers. But then also taking it to the perspective of, most people are not going to be my customers, but they're going to be my advocates. They're going to like me. They're going to know me. And someone said it, but it's branding is what people say behind your back. And
Yeah.
so even though people don't buy my products, they don't work with me. I only shoot like maybe 5 or 7 people a month, which is really not a lot of people.
Mhm.
It's everybody else that on LinkedIn, especially, that's like, hey, this is Kevin guy. He does really great work. He's a really nice guy.
Yep.
Right. And then they'll speak for me. And it's really cultivating a lot of that. So in the beginning, long story short, I guess in the beginning is what could I do as a business that differentiate myself from all the other photographers out there?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There are 10 zillion photographers out there. 10 zillion. You said something very clear where I found a way to make myself stand out. Brandon from People of New York, from Stories of New York. I always get it wrong. He went to New York, couldn't get a job, started just taking pictures of people and sharing their stories. More and more people are gravitating towards storytelling versus just even the art of the photography. The photography supports the story. And I think that for me, as a storyteller, as a person that works with people to develop stories, I always say, like, we've been hearing stories since we were little. We can remember the stories we were told when we were younger. Family stories, stories from a book. I mean, we know these things. How did we gravitate away from it? And how are you getting people to actually tell you their stories? Because sometimes you'll meet someone you're talking about and they're like, well, I don't have a story. I got nothing. And you're like, of course you do. So how do you find that way of building the trust to get the best story, not just a story, but the best story out of the individuals that you're working with?
Mr. Rogers said it. I think everybody loves Mr. Rogers. He said it. He said something along the lines of, everybody has a story, right? Or everybody has something that everybody has a reason to love. I don't know, something similar to there's always something more to a person.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a teacher, just going back to that, I had students coming in every Monday or every Tuesday, and it's a new set of students, and they would be sometimes they're low-level English language speakers, very low English proficiency, and then I had a classroom of like maybe 10, 15, 20 other students. How to integrate these new students from a country that's very different than the other countries, so they don't speak the same language.
Mm-hmm.
How to bring them into the classroom. And I think that's a skill set that I have as a teacher, where without a lot of language, it's the smile, it's the look of listening, the head tilt. It's just anything that they say is fascinating and interesting, even though I've heard it before.
Yep.
They come in and they mention one thing. It's like, oh, it's got really busy today. It's like, oh yeah, what happened today? It's like, oh, and then they'll mention a kid, and I'm like, oh, what's your kid's name? And they'll be like, Zoe. I'm like, oh, how old is Zoe? And then we get into that, and then you can start seeing the person's eyes light up. And then what brings you in today? Oh, I'm getting promotion. Oh, that's wonderful. Or like I'm moving jobs, and it's like, was it by choice or was it because you wanted to? Because it wasn't choice.
Yeah.
They got a new job. You congratulate them, especially during the pandemic. Anything that they say is worthy of celebration and worthy of love.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just keep going. As an introvert, it's very difficult for me to connect with a lot of people, which makes the event photography very difficult. But with headshots, it's that one-on-one experience.
Mm-hmm.
And with that one-on-one experience, I even wrote this into my mission statement, is everybody is the most important person in the world, is the most important person in their field. And my job is to bring that out of them. And so whether they are a CEO or whether they are a entry-level recent graduate college student and they're going to entry-level job,
mm-hmm.
whatever that they've done to that point it's worthy of sharing.
I do like that. I like that.
And then they get comfortable and then they feel like they're at home, and then they want to continue to share more. And sometimes I'm taking a picture and I just stop taking a picture and I just listen to them. And then right after they finish, I go back in front of the camera or behind the camera,
mm-hmm.
and say, think about that again. And then it's click, and then that's usually the winner.
Yeah. Because they're more relaxed with you. They're relaxed with you. They're sharing something about themselves, they're just thinking they're just going in, getting a Olin Mills a photo, and then they're out, or like, or a Kmart or whatever photo. So I think that's that the essence of making someone feel comfortable in a situation where most people feel uncomfortable is beyond a gift that you had. And I think that comes from teaching. And also it just comes from your family and the dynamics of all the relatives coming in. And so there was always, I mean, I'm sure also you have a lot of siblings. There's a lot of people involved in your world at all times. So you were uncomfortable at any given situation throughout your entire life. And now you're using all those skill sets, and you're now paying it forward by making these random people that you may only see once feel super comfortable and show the best of them, which is such, I mean, like so good and such a gift. You mentioned the word pandemic. March 2020. You have a brand new business. The world is imploding. Everyone, I mean, our governor shuts it down. What do you do? I mean, what happens now? So like from the pandemic, so like we're in like almost 2 years now. We thought it was going to be 3 weeks. We thought it was going to be 3 months. We thought it was going to be 1 year. We're going into 2 years now, and it's going to be around for quite some time. What happens for you, your business, your family during this time of lockdown, and then opening, closing, people not feeling safe coming indoors, knowing that you need them to be indoors? How was that for you during this entire time?
Blessing. Taking the optimistic approach, it's been a wonderful blessing. We shot in the house for 2019. I made only $3,000 in 2019, but I shot people in the house. I made a few $100 per person, like $100 per person. Pandemic hit around. Pandemic was announced really in the virus was announced really in February, but in January of last year, I found out I was having a baby. And so the decision was we cannot have it in the house anymore.
Yep.
It laid off in March 2020, and then April and May trying to figure out what to do. Didn't really think about it much, and then around May, June, the decision to create a national event for all the headshot photographers to do something and to photograph people.
Okay.
And so we photographed people who were laid off from pandemic, and that was like something that we just like all did. Like I think
how many of you?
Headshots.
How many of you were there?
There was probably about 150 or something of us across
Wow.
the nation, and then one in Mexico. Ernie
Wow.
from Mexico. Because we just needed to do something, and we decided to not accept money. We decided to not even accept tips. One person forced a $25 gift card on me. She came and was like, "Here, take it," and then she just walked off. I'm like, okay. But one thing we all agreed on was like, we do not accept tips. We don't accept any form of cash, nothing. And it's just, if people offer us, we give it back, except for the one woman who forced a $25 gift card at me and walked away. And that was really the start of a lot of our careers, was the giving back. So after that, I rented co-working spaces, just rooms. So I did like I did a plan of like five rentals a day.
Yep.
Until I got a couple of people there, built up each person one at a time. And then I rent one of my friends who owns a tailor. She gave me her space 1 day a week to shoot. So then I just did that as well. And then I got another photographer. We worked together, and I rented his space. And then so we just collaborated because his business was down, so he needed to pay rent. And then I got a co-working space. I just bought out all the desks in a co-working space. And then I had this small little tiny room, which is just enough for headshots. And then a month or 2 months ago, I got this space here, which is 600 square feet compared to about 150 square feet from before, compared to my home, which is just my living room. And it's just a slow build. And a lot of people were online. And so every time I went on LinkedIn, it was just sharing a story and then getting people to be happy. And it's like I think in social media, it's you give them something entertaining or something aspiring, but you give them these positive feelings and the people will react. And so I kind of knew that, and I really zoned in on telling those stories, telling stories of my family, telling stories of inspiration of other people who are that I took headshots for, and sharing the stories of like adapting and growth.
There are so many people, and I call them just absolute badasses because they started and I'm going to put myself into this category. Started their business in recession 2008. Mm-hmm. Started their business during the height of the pandemic. You are one of those people. What would you say to someone that? Because I mean, like at the end of the day, you never want to leave a good crisis on the table. You always want to like reap the benefits there. What would you say to someone, the highs and lows for you in regards of starting a business? Because there's so many people that, do I leave my job? Do I stay in my job? I got fired. I was laid off. I was just the gamut of I don't have what I used to, and now I want to do something. I've always wanted to do something, but I'm scared. So what would be what were your highs and what were your lows, and what did you learn from it, and what could you teach other people about it?
Maybe the most important thing is to have good people around you, whether you pay for it, like a coach or a coaching group, or you just have other good mentors around you, or even something as simple as so my friend and I were both teachers, and we were laid off around the same time, and we decided to do a book club. And so we read a book a month for the first couple of months, and we just talked about it. So we got together, we read a couple of chapters. Each week, we just spent an hour, 2 hours, and just talking on the phone. In fact, I've only seen her twice in the last 18 months. Physically only seen her twice, and with work-related purposes. But I think finding good people around you who understands the pain of it, but also don't wallow in it. I think it's very easy to just there is a place to just rant and complain, and you got to get those emotions out. It's definitely true. It's very healthy to do that. But at the same time, knowing the timing of when to move forward ever so slowly. I was part of a headshot photography marketing group, and we didn't have any work. And so the two heads of the group had a hashtag like just do it, or just do something.
Yeah.
And JDS, just do something. And it's basically, he just gave us homework assignments every week. He just emailed us. We had a Facebook group, but he just emailed us, do this. That's it. It's a 5-minute activity. Make a video, write one blog entry, redo one of your pictures, go take a selfie, write on social media about your family, just do something just to keep us going so that we feel like there's progress.
I think that's amazing. How many people were in the group? And I think that's brilliant, because I have a group of friends where I send them email saying, I've done my homework. You will not die this way. Are you in or are you out? And it could be some random things where it took me skydiving. We went to yoga with goats, random things. Cool. I know it was awesome. I'm not gonna lie, it was awesome. Cool. But it's those things where I am thinking about it. I may not do it until someone motivates me, and then I get excited. So how big was this group, and how does one even develop a group like that? Because there's always it has to be that one leader. And what if that one leader doesn't want to lead anymore?
And now a message from our sponsor. Since 2017, the Foundation for Business Equity has existed to support Black and Latinx-led companies in reaching their full potential by providing access to critical growth tools that include expanded networks, capital, and markets. To learn more about the Foundation for Business Equity, FBE, visit fbequity.org. And now back to our guest.
Those are interesting questions. This group has been going on for about 2 years before I joined.
Okay.
Maybe 3 years. It started off as a mastermind group of people who just like let's figure out marketing, and so they shared their data with each other. They're competitors.
Yeah.
But they share their data with each other, and then it became big enough where they're like, okay, one person decided, or two people decided to make it a lead, and then the price was $750 a year.
Okay.
So it's enough to be like, it precludes a lot of people, but at the same time, the investment is there. And it's good because there's 2 Zoom meetings a week,
Okay.
and we all just contribute, we just talk and we share in that sense. And then there's like the Facebook group where we just complain, but then the complaint turns into like suggestions on how to do better.
Yep.
Rather than complain and everybody else, harping on the complaints.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I had this client and he's blah blah blah, and then one person. So like one person wanted a headshot. I gave them a headshot. I didn't do the headshot that they wanted because when you click into the picture, it's a full body, but they didn't know that. I didn't know that, and they blamed me for it. And then I was like, but then so they finally sued over, but I'll charge you. And then they got angry, so I wrote into the group like blah blah blah. I hate him, he's an idiot client. And then my mentors, they're just like, Kevin, you fucked up. Yeah. You're the expert. You're supposed to have done the work. And if you didn't get it done, then you fix it.
Yeah.
Don't charge him. You messed up. And how much does it cost to bring him in for 5 minutes? You already know what he looks like. You know what his best sides are. Bring him in, set up the lights, shoot him for 5 minutes, give him something amazing, and then move on. You're spending more time right now and more energy ranting about this guy than you would be to just say, come back in for 5 minutes.
Right.
And I'm like, oh.
The bubble has been popped. Deflated.
And that's what I mean by like finding good people who would, put you in your place in a good way. But then also at the same time, there's times where we just have to complain, and then people sympathize with that as well.
So that definitely is a high of that's definitely a high of something that you've experienced. What were some of the lows? Because the high is that community that you're part of.
There was a time where after, I think it was in May, because May was also my birthday, where I just sat.
May 2021 or May 2020?
May 2020. Right before the decision to go full time is my wife, she still had a job. Fortunately, her company went online like immediately because they already had the infrastructure.
Yep.
It wasn't implemented, but they had to plan for the infrastructure that we're going to implement later. So they just moved it forward. So hers was great. Ours wasn't. And so I watched Netflix and other TV for like 18 hours a day. Every single day. And I did not clean the house. I do most of the cooking at house.
Yeah.
Didn't cook, didn't clean. I didn't go out. I slept in a guest room. It was smelly in the guest room. I didn't shower every day. But my wife gave me that space of just not knowing what my life was going to be at that point.
Yeah.
Because around May, that's when it became like serious. That's when the whole world, that's when everything shut down. It wasn't just like emergency in April. It was just nothing. The entire country, entire world, and it's just like I don't know what to do anymore. I have no other skill sets. That's what I believe. Like I have no other skill sets. I'm just a teacher. That it doesn't transfer to anything. If I do anything else, it would be I'll be starting entry level again. I have a master's degree, but I don't want to teach anymore. But do I want to teach anymore? And so it's almost like a month, maybe 5 weeks of just nothing, just cloud and darkness. And also like my wife, she's doing her ultrasounds, and I couldn't be there. I couldn't be at any of the doctor visits. Because they only let one person. They just let
right at the time. I was gonna say, I'm not gonna go. Wait, you what? I'm like, that's right. At the time, you weren't allowed to go in.
No, I didn't get to see my baby until a week before he was born. In the ultrasound, that's when they just allowed me to see, and that's probably the one of the few regrets that I have of the pandemic, and that was really sad.
You talk about how you've gone through deep depressions throughout your life. I mean, you take it personally. I mean, you take it to heart.
Yes.
A lot of small businesses, they do. I mean, it's personal. A small business is, if something goes wrong, if someone says something, it is like you're peeling back my skin. We take it to heart. how did you find ways to alleviate and get better, and then get back to work? Because there's so many of us, and I will always say us, because I have those days where I'm like, I could sit, well, there are days where something goes wrong and I'm playing Candy Crush, a version of Candy Crush. And before I know it, it's like, wow, my thumb hurts really badly. And it has now been 6 hours because I don't own a TV. So there's no TV here. I could stream a movie, but that's just not going to hold my attention. I could go for a walk, but I just literally sit there and have my pity party. Sometimes I just go to sleep and I'm ending the day. Sometimes I get a pint of ice cream and I'm eating an entire pint of ice cream. But we all have our days of, are you just freaking joking? Oh yeah, by the way, don't cuss. Because they use all alternatives, but no more cussing. I gave you that one cuss.
Okay, sorry.
But we all have our days of just, I can't get out of my own way. You have discussed many times that you couldn't get out of your own way. How do you do it? I mean, when you're running a business, you have a family. What are your thoughts about how do you move on?
I think there's a thing that I call, I don't know if it's a real term, but I call it productive procrastination. So it's doing something that's not necessarily progressing the business necessarily, and it's not necessarily a hobby either. So like even just like watching YouTube videos is one thing, and so I'll just go into a deep dive of just watching YouTube videos of like what's the best microphone for a podcast, and I'll just go on and I'll just sit there and just zone out on that. But I'm learning stuff without actually really putting in effort. I think I think you say like going for a walk is not really fun, but sometimes a couple of times actually. One time it was raining, and so I just grabbed my beach chair from the basement and I just put it outside and I just sat there and just stared just stared into the rain. And that was nice. I had a book there, so I think I only read like a page at that time, and I just looked out into the rain. I just sat and just thought to myself, whatever.
Would that be your form of meditation? I mean, and mind you, I love going for walks, but there are days that I just don't want to. I can't find a way out of the annoyance of me. So would that be your form of meditation? Because now the camera for me has become my meditation time, where it's the only time I could turn off the world. I just go out and I see things. I mean, we see things that most people overlook through the lens. And so I forever, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to go, I'm going to sit there and take yoga classes. I try to find so many different ways to meditate. I'm high energy. If you can't tell, I'm high energy. But the camera is the only time that I'm like I just get lost in whatever I'm taking a picture of. And so for you, I mean, you are finding things to do, but I mean, there are people that they just don't know how to do it, because especially, I'm sorry, let me articulate this better. They don't know how to find ways to calm down the noise. They can't find ways of getting out of their own way, but yet they still have to work. They still have to build. They still have to deliver. So how are you able to do all of those and still produce? I mean, the great thing about watching you, I can see all the faces behind your head, which is great product placement. Good job. but it is one of those moments where I can see that you work, because I can see your work. So how do you lift yourself back up? What advice would you tell anybody to lift themselves back up to get back to work?
For me to get out of my way, I think I need to get off the cell phone and get off the tech, which is why the sitting down for a while, or even just having the videos downloaded and just kind of focusing on watching videos is a thing, as opposed to just kind of scrolling through, just watching movies and stuff. If I don't want to be active about it. But I think another is kind of going back to what I said before about having that group, or having the people around you. Sometimes for me as an introvert, it's always fun to have extroverted friends who are always talking, and just calling up. There's a couple of times so the friend from Korea that I went to Korea with, her name's Rosie. Sometimes she loves to talk, and I think it's wonderful. And we just talk about family, and And she's just pure extrovert. And so there are a couple of times this pandemic where it's like, hey, do you got time later? And we'll just get on the phone and we'll be on for like 4 hours, and she'll be talking through most of the things. And then she just asks questions and really wants to engage. And then I think what's really cool is that she's asking questions about my family. So I get to appreciate the things that I have without actually thinking about it consciously, without being active about it.
Yep.
And then she's answered her own questions, right? And then so she'll talk about her family, and then just the joy. And then again, like I guess what I said before, it's like the celebration of other people. And that has also worked as well, without me putting in the effort to do much other than setting up a time to talk with the person. And just thinking about it now, I think I never thought about the way that you brought it up. But I think that's a good part of it is just being passive about building relationships and then building knowledge of something as well. And then zoning out with the just sitting outside with my beach chair. I think being around other people who like takes up a lot of energy. And so when I get to enjoy other people without being an active participant, I think that's really nice.
I think it's also amazing for you to acknowledge that. So many times an introvert people are like, I go, oh, an introvert. I mean, like the introverts get such a bad rep. And I always say, like, I go, I'm an extrovert introvert. I love my quiet time. I said, I go, when the pandemic happened, people were like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm good. I'm a Caribbean kid. We weren't allowed to go outside. So this is my happy place. I mean, this time I was trained for this time. So this is great. And so being the high energy person, but yet love, just like there's 10 zillion things I could do in my home. I could not leave my apartment for weeks. And I'm like, I'm still going to be busy. I'm still going to be creating content. And so when someone says like I'm an introvert, extrovert, and everyone's like, oh, I'm like, no, that's a good thing too. We need both introverts and extroverts. So I think that you found ways to, being an introvert, you have found ways to get yourself out there, to talk more to people, to create a business that engages you with more people. Holy moly, I go, this is like the best of all worlds that most people would say like, I'm going to sit there and create a business and I'm going to just type numbers into a computer and I don't want to have to deal with other people. You've just done the entire opposite for who you are as the persona of who you are as a person.
I think there's a Boston public speaking expert, Kit Pang, and when he was teaching me about, he piloted a program for public speaking on camera early in the sometime in summer last year. And one of the topics one of the lessons was like, I want you to send videos to people that you know. And I guess you used to talk to. So right now I'm talking to a camera. You're right here, but like I'm talking to the camera. I can kind of see you from my side, and I get your emotions and your smile and everything. But talking to a camera, he said, talk to the camera, but talk to a friend, and really develop that. And then Gary Vee talks a lot about just documenting versus creating. And so when I created my videos in the past, or when I wrote on LinkedIn, wasn't me talking to everybody, which I think it's in marketing. We think in small businesses, they want to talk to everybody, right?
Yep.
But it's not talking to everybody. It's just talking to your customer persona. It's talking to your target market.
Yeah. I always say that's like, so I would say you're spitting into the wind when you do that. And that's not very useful to your company. So if you're just spitting into the wind, a high gust of wind, you're like, you know what's going to happen. It's going to come right back at you. Yeah. It really is. Oh, that hurt. And so it is one of those moments where figure out who you're talking to, which will be very, very beneficial. It's kind of funny because when you're talking with your hands, you went out of focus. So whenever you talk to your hands, the camera picks up on the getting out of focus. All right. I've taken so much of your time and I really appreciate it. And I always say, this is not going to be the last time. I mean, I want to have these conversations more and more, because why would I want to, if something's happening in the news, if something's happening that is engaging, this is the time that we should have you come on and talk about what's happening in your industry, what's happening in your everyday. So I always will say that you will randomly, I'll just email, like I go, hey, Kevin, are you available? So just hop on for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So be it known that I will always reach out. So keep an eye on
Agreed.
that one.
And then I'll see you in a couple of weeks to
Yes.
get a picture done too.
I know in January. I'm so excited. Yay! I'm so excited. So I always end it the same way with everybody. I ask the two questions. If you had a personal ask and a professional ask of anyone that's listening to you right now, what would be your personal ask and what would be your professional ask? And they have to be two different answers, please.
My personal ask is building community. I love it. And I'm always up for having a conversation with anybody. So if you want to just hang out and talk for 30 minutes, come to the studio. And then I just love hearing stories. I love asking questions. I think that's one of the most fun things is just to connect on a human level. So I always will have time. Let me rephrase that. When I don't always have time, but I really want to make time to just hang out. And that's what I've been doing throughout the entire pandemic, is just doing virtual calls with people multiple times a week. At least 3 people a week. I just talk to a stranger. And then sometimes like you said, we go back and we hang out and we talk again because they have my link and just want to talk. And then some people I just talk to once, and then that's about it. And that's okay, because it's about building a tighter community. So that's something I really love. My professional ask is what I want to move into, especially going to next year, is photographing teams, and getting into your office space, photographing your team, photographing team working, because I know that there's a lot of stock images that are out there, but there's not stock images of you, especially if you have a very diverse age-wise, gender and ethnicities. Capturing that story for your company and then listening to your stories of like where you want to go and where you came from, and then be able to put that into a visual medium. That's what I want to do. Working with branding and then getting your headshots done, of course, but really telling the story of what your company represents and stands for, and then pulling all that together. And I would love to work with anybody with that, especially startups, because they always have the best stories and the best intentions.
I love that you said that. So, because I tell my clients all the time, stop buying stock photos that everyone's using the same thing. Biomed, you guys have the same stock photos all the time. Yeah. And it's amazing. And you own it if you invest the same money that you're investing in stock photos, hire a photographer to come in and create your own personal stock photo. Yes, I love that you're doing that. I love that you're going into this. Like, that's something that's going to be very, very useful for me, for a lot of my clients that I use. So I'm super psyched about that one. Before we go, how is it being a dad, and how are your parents with, like, now that you guys get to see each other, how's the family with you with the business, and seeing you as a dad?
Yeah, my father loves it. When he had to hustle so hard, he's retired now. The pandemic made him shut down his sandwich shop. But he gets to spend hours and hours every single day, I think 10 hours a day with my son, which he wasn't able to do when I was younger, where he worked 16, 18 hours a day. Yeah. So he loves it so much. Is it crazy just to watch your dad with your son? It's just so weird because he didn't treat me like that. Not because it's almost like I'm just jealous. It's like, why are you? Oh man. And I asked my mom, like, did he treat me like this? Like, no, he wasn't home. I was like, well, I guess that's fine because it's not really contradictory. He's not, but it's like, but he loves him so much, and I think that's just, he just dotes on him, and I get to see what he would have wanted to be with me, but he had to be harder, not because he was mean, but because he's just, you work 16, 18 hours a day, manual labor in a factory, and you run the factory, and you have employees, and you're your own like delivery driver and salesperson, and everything. It's hard. Yeah. And coming home and all you're doing is sleeping, eating, going back out, Oh,
don't forget grumpy. My dad was like, sleep, eat, grumpy.
A lot of grumpiness.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of this.
Did you get a lot of no's as well? Did you get a lot? We got a lot of no. This.
I was a very curious kid. Let's just say. So there's a lot of no's, a lot of old world discipline. Let's say.
We're gonna have. See, I think that our next conversation, or when I see you, that's gonna be this conversation in regards of like, I'm sure we can play a tennis match of all the things that we grew up with.
A fish as a discipline tool. A fish. An uncooked, in the middle of being prepped fish as a discipline tool for coming home late. we'll leave that for next time.
Oh my God, I love it. Kevin, thank you so very much. This was like wonderful. Like, I mean, like this is like me with my hair, where it's like my hair is up, my hair is down. I'm like, there's so much going on here because like, I was just like, oh my God, I want to play. It just, you gave me so much. You gave me so much. And I just enjoy you. I mean, like, I know that I'm my high energy to your lower energy. I go, but you just gave so much in regards of your story and who you are, your story. Yay. You listen to everyone else's story, but now this was all about you. But I really want to make sure that whenever we can find more ways to get you engaged, I mean, I want more people to understand who you are, where you come from, what you do, how you do it, and how you make this world that much better by bringing people together. So thank you.
Thank you, Jodi, for this time and allowing me to share that again. I don't normally do, and I really appreciate your energy and too as well. It feels really nice, and I'm grateful for it.
Oh, you're the best. All right, my friend, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.
All right, take care, Jodi. Have a
All
great
right,
holiday.
bye.
Bye.